mention, all of both the presentation that you're going to see today, as well as the data and crosstabs are all posted on the GSI website at greaterspokane.org. And my guess is we'll drop that link in here across the course of the webinar as well, so that you can dive into the data as well. And we will have the chat feature is enabled, so you can drop your questions in there as we go along. There's also the Q&A, and we'll have an opportunity to dive into questions once we get through the bulk of the presentation. And of course, if you have any questions along the way, just let us know. So a little bit back to the pulse. The pulse is the standard by which we measure community outlook and provide policymakers with data that they need to help make informed decisions. Our commitment to the community and to policymakers from day one has been to make this data completely transparent and available. And in doing that, we have engaged one of Washington's and truly a national leader in research, EMC Research, to conduct these representative polls so we can receive clear scientific view of voter opinion of the direction our region is headed. This whole intent is that we're going to have credible, data-driven insights that help us to bridge the gap between public sentiment and policymaking and our ability to support Spokane's growth as we look forward. We're sharing this work today in an eye towards expanding and supporting the work that GSI does on your behalf day in and day out to advance our region for our employers, our workforce, and for our community. These findings help to inform ongoing advocacy solutions that enhance quality of life, strengthen economic competitiveness, and rebuild public trust, all rooted in what we are hearing from our own community. The results of the third edition of the Pulse show consistency. Voters are very consistent on the issues and priorities that are top of mind, that are impacting quality of life here in the Spokane region, and also really clear on the types of actions that they're looking to have taken to address these areas of concern. So I am pleased, just a couple of other notes. Voters' top concerns remain the same as they have now for a year, back to this theme of consistency. We did the first Pulse survey back in October of 2024. That the top concerns of homelessness, public safety, and trust in government continue to be the issues top of mind for our residents here in Spokane County, and that they're looking for tangible progress on these issues. They want to see it as a collective approach. They want visible results that impact our downtown, impact our region, and impact their neighborhoods. I am pleased to have Kevin White, who is a director at EMC Research here and has been working with us on the Pulse since the beginning. He is going to jump in and walk us through the results, and then we'll be available for questions on the back end. So Kevin, great to see you. Happy Monday, and I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thanks a lot, Alicia. I will get started here. Let me just share my screen. All right. We'll dive right in. Thanks everyone for being here today. Really appreciate the introduction from Alicia. So just to get started, what I'll do is talk a little bit about the methodology we employ here, which is sort of how we do this poll. So we used what we call a mixed mode methodology, and all that means is we're reaching people where they are. So we're using live telephone interviews as well as texts and emails with a link where people can go self-administer the survey. And we're surveying registered voters across Spokane County. That is as wide a base as we can talk to. We're not talking to a specific electorate, people who are going to show up to vote. Absolutely. We're talking to anyone who's signed up to vote. Everyone has basically an equal chance of participating in this survey. You can see there it took place mid to late September, so about a month ago at this point. And we do a total of 600 interviews. 300 of those are within the city of Spokane because we want a greater depth of data. That is a slight oversample. And so the margin of error overall is about 4.5 percentage points. Anything sort of within that range has not changed statistically significantly since the spring. 300 of those interviews are within the city of Spokane, and then another 300 in the rest of the county. But we do reweight and we balance out the demographics. So voters in the city are not overrepresented. They're not weighting the results one way or the other. The overall results you see properly represent city of Spokane voters in proportion to voters outside of the city. So, diving into some of our key findings, the pulse, which is our aggregate measure of quality of life, has declined slightly down to 3.3 from a 3.5 6 months ago. And what we're really seeing, as Alicia mentioned, was a lot of consistent concern around homelessness and public safety specifically. And addressing those issues, voters say, will go very far in improving quality of life in the region. We also saw a lot of signals about safety. Voters continue to be unsatisfied with safety. A majority report not feeling safe in their own neighborhoods. And a good chunk of voters would not feel safe at downtown Spokane during the day, and a strong majority say they don't feel safe downtown at night. We also ask a few questions about the economy and perceptions of both the local economy and people's personal financial situations. And there's a lot of concern there as well, a lot of pessimism, and that really does color how people are viewing these quality of life ratings. And specifically when it comes to questions about growth, we see that there's a lot of division. It's a very even split on questions of growth more broadly and whether it's been beneficial to the community, as well as specifically around building more and different types of housing. So diving right in here, here you can see on the left the list of questions that make up our pulse. So what we do is we take these questions, sort of aggregate them into one measure from a 0 to 10 scale. You can see countywide we're at that 3.3. Voters in Spokane Valley similar at a 3.3, whereas those in the city of Spokane at a 3.6. And you can see the trend here, slight decline since we started this last year, but we've been very much consistently in this 3 to 4 range. So there is very much a room to grow, but there's also room to fall. So want to hopefully start seeing this tick upwards, but overall been fairly consistent over the past year. Looking at some of these questions that make up the pulse in a little more detail, here in the top left is one of our standard questions. It's a question that every public opinion researcher uses in some firm in basically every survey. And it's right direction, wrong track, which is just a sense for how voters think things are going in the community. And as you can see here, only about 1 in 3 voters across Spokane County is saying, will say things are going in the right direction. And that's down 7 points from where we were in the spring. Furthermore, nearly 2/3 of voters say that quality of life in the Spokane region has gotten worse, and a slight majority disagree. They do not say they are optimistic about the future of this region. Throughout, we'll have these breakdowns of the city of Spokane as well as the city of Spokane Valley. For the most part, the cities have been fairly consistent with one another as well as voters overall. Here in the city of Spokane, you can see some of the ways it got a slightly higher rating in the pulse. 4 in 10 say things are going the right direction. Still, nearly 6 in 10 say things are off on the wrong track. Nearly 2/3 say quality of life has gotten worse, and a majority disagree that they're not that they're optimistic about the future. Spokane Valley, again, very similar trend lines. 2/3 say quality of life has gotten worse. Nearly 2/3 say things are on the wrong track. A slight majority do agree they're optimistic about their future, but very much evenly split here in Spokane Valley. We also see a lot of voters say that have actively considered moving out of the area. 2/3 of the voters countywide report moving out of the area, and as you can see, that's jumped 2 points since the spring. So been consistently high. Consistent majority of voters say they've actively considered moving. There's only so many questions we can ask, and this has been one we've gotten a few questions about. We don't have any follow-up questions on this specifically, so take some extrapolation or assumptions as to what people are talking about when they say they're actively considering moving. Is it something local? Is it something happening at the state? Is it financial? Is it something else? Plenty of reasons that go into this, but what we can tell is that when 2/3 of the voters say they've considered moving, it is a reflection on their perceptions of quality of life. So we do try to ask some good news, try to get some good news out of this. So we ask this as an open-ended question. And what an open-ended question means is respondents tell us in their own words. There's no scale for them to select off of. There's no pre-provided answers for them to choose. They give us what they think they like best about the Spokane region in their own words, and then we code them into some common categories. And what we've consistently seen is voters are very much uh, enthused with the access to public lands, the nature, the scenery, and the landscape of the region. About a quarter mentioned specifically the nature and scenery. Another 16% frame it more as access to public lands, outdoor recreation, and another 14% mentioned specifically sort of the climate, all four seasons, having that sort of seasonality to the region. Overall, not a whole lot of differences between the two cities. You can see those in Spokane Valley a little more likely to describe it as nature, scenery, or landscape, and less likely to sort of point to actual access to public lands or outdoor recreation as their favorite thing about living in the Spokane region. Now, getting into the top concerns. Again, this is an open-ended question. We don't give anybody the answers. They're not selecting from a pre-recorded list. We just ask them, what are the issues facing Spokane that you're most frustrated or concerned about? And they tell us in their own words. And what we've seen consistently across the pulse is that homelessness and public safety are the top two issues for voters. And we're not seeing the share of voters that mention that decline. Homelessness and public safety are not issues unique to Spokane. It is something very many cities in Washington State, across the West Coast, across the country are facing. And we'll probably continue to see that be the case. But what we will look to see and what will sort of signal that there's change and that there's improving perceptions is the share of voters mentioning this as their top issues will start to decline. We do very similar work in Seattle. And of course, it is a very different market that is all focused on just the city of Seattle. It's not a county-wide survey. But as you might expect, homelessness and public safety are the top two issues in Seattle. And what we've seen over the course of our research there is while they remain the top two issues, even in research we did just this previous month, the share of voters that mention them has declined quite significantly. Progress can be made on these issues, and we will see that represented in the share of voters mentioning it declining. But it's unlikely that they'll ever sort of fall out of the top two or three issues for voters. Well, never say never, but it'll take a while for them to fall out. Looking at the breakdown across the cities, what you can see is that concern about homelessness is very prevalent within the city of Spokane. Half of all voters in the city of Spokane mention homelessness as a top issue or concern. Compared to Spokane Valley, where again, it is right there, basically tied for first with public safety, but public safety just narrowly edges it out. Whereas in Spokane, homelessness gets mentioned 18 points more often than public safety does. As we saw a little bit earlier, quality of life ratings or perceptions of quality of life are quite negative. Two-thirds of voters in the county say quality of life has gotten worse, and including a quarter saying quality of life has gotten much worse. So we don't really sort of put a time frame. This is all very much up to the interpretation of the respondent here. But the fact that we see such high numbers consistently, again, is something to keep an eye on, something we track very closely, and we really hope to start seeing these numbers change. As I mentioned, there is a lot of concern about the economy and people's personal finances. Nearly 8 in 10 voters say they are concerned about their personal financial situation. And again, if you have concerns about making ends meet, sort of balancing your checkbook at the kitchen table, it's going to color your perceptions of quality of life. If you think things are too tough in your own household, you're not going to think the quality of life in your area is very great. So very much a contributing factor. As we, advocate and push for the changes that voters say will improve quality of life, things like this can act as a drag. It can be one of the things that dampens the impact of improvements in quality of life if voters are still concerned about their personal finances. So, this is one of the core sets of questions of the Pulse. What we do here is we ask a long list of questions on a 1 to 7 scale and ask respondents to rate how much of an impact on quality of life would that action or item have. And what we've done here is we've sorted it by the share of voters that said that item would have a very significant impact, or a 7 out of 7. And what we see is that the top 5 items here all very much tied to those top issues we just saw. So, prohibiting encampments on parks, on sidewalks, and other public rights of way, as well as improving treatment services for drug addiction and mental health, very much, of course, have ties to addressing homelessness, and then increasing efforts to address violent crime, increasing efforts to address property crime, and helping businesses deal with local or deal with public safety concerns, all very much have to do with crime and public safety. So to really distill why we do this research, voters have told us what they're concerned about, which is homelessness and public safety, and what things they would like to see done to address them. And that's increasing efforts to address crime, helping local businesses, prohibiting encampments, and improving treatment services. So a very sort of clear photo or description of what voters want to see. The two cities had very similar sort of trends here. You can see those same top 5 items here in the city of Spokane rise to the top as well. I mean, again, talking about Spokane, especially concerned about homelessness. 61% of voters in the city of Spokane say that prohibiting camping in parks, on sidewalks, and other public rights of way would have a very significant impact on quality of life, and nearly 8 in 10 say it would have an impact on quality of life. Spokane Valley, again, very similar in terms of the relative rankings to one another. Uh, and the one change, making it easier to start and grow a business, does creep into the top 5 in terms of very significant impact, just narrowly over helping local businesses deal with public safety concerns. Getting a little further into public safety, as I mentioned, most voters say they feel less safe in their own neighborhoods compared to even a couple years ago. 53%, including nearly 6 in 10, 58% of voters in the city of Spokane. And that has jumped significantly since the spring. Um, again, if you're worried about safety in your own neighborhood, you're not going to feel like things in the community are going in the right direction, that things are all well and good and you feel great about quality of life. So, another sort of data point that we want to see improve, and that will correspond with improving quality of life ratings. Next, we ask this a battery of questions that's specific to funding for public safety. Again, it's a 1 to 7 scale, with 7 being this is an extremely important item to fund regarding public safety, and 1 being not at all important to me. And what we really see here is voters endorsing a comprehensive approach on public safety. So there is, widespread support for sort of more traditional public safety approaches, such as hiring more police officers. Nearly 7 in 10 say that would be important. Nearly 4 in 10 say that is extremely important. But there's also support for treatment for mental health and drug or alcohol abuse, mental health crisis response teams, which very much tie into, again, addressing homelessness, but also tied into that item we saw about just, more mental health services, provision of services, being having a significant impact on quality of life. Another thing to note here, voters say all of these items, a majority of voters say all of these items are important. Even this bottom rated item here, 53% say is important. And the trend line here is noteworthy. Not all of these have changed statistically significantly, but the fact they're all moving in one direction is noteworthy. And so taken in conjunction with the consistent mentions of public safety, the consistently high concern for safety in their own neighborhood, and now the importance rating, the share of voters rating these items as important has all grown across the board. We really do see voters emphasize the importance of public safety and want to continue to see progress made on that issue. The cities, again, very consistent, as you might expect. They make up a large chunk of the overall here. But here in Spokane, you can see that same trend. Everything is rated as at least slightly more important than it was 6 months ago. And it's all pointing in one direction, saying that there is some level of increased importance on public safety. Spokane Valley, again, very similar. The margin of error is a lot higher here. Some of them are not trending. Some of them did slightly decrease, but this is all very much for the most part, within the margin of error here. So not a whole lot of change and very consistent with what we've seen in the city of Spokane and Spokane County overall. Three-quarters of voters believe that hiring more police officers should be an immediate priority. That is consistent across the two cities as well. And nearly half of voters, about 43%, say they strongly agree with that statement. This is very much a question that will remain consistent. There is always, a good amount of voters who, of course, hiring more police officers should be an immediate priority. They sort of have the sense of it can only help. There's never too many police officers. So this is a question moving forward. I expect to sort of stay fairly consistent. We've seen that in other research as well. It's not one that moves a whole lot. But does sort of signal at this level, having three-quarters of voters say more police officers should be a priority, does sort of speak to everyone speaking from a common base and sort of in alignment on this question. Now, getting into some questions more aimed at governance and attitudes around tax and government spending. As we've seen since we started this last year, there continues to be a lot of distrust of local government. Wherever you see city in brackets here, what that means is we piped in the most appropriate local government for the respondent. So if they were on our records as living in the city of Spokane, they would hear the city of Spokane has enough money to address important priorities. They just need to spend it more effectively. And we do that for every town, Spokane, Spokane Valley, all the smaller towns in the community. And if they lived in unincorporated Spokane County, they would hear just Spokane County has enough money to address important priorities. We've seen, again, consistently high, I think, negative ratings here. Two-thirds of voters say that local government has enough money. It just needs to be spent more effectively. 6 in 10 don't trust government to spend tax dollars responsibly. And 7 in 10 say that local governments don't necessarily have an effective plan to address these critical issues. I will note that overall, the trend here is going in the direction we would like it to see. Agreement is down 7 points here and up 6 and 8 points respectively on these two questions. So that is the direction we want to see things. It is statistically significant. But really the takeaway is how high of majorities are still landing on the lack of trust side. A few more questions up top here. Local government should focus on funding the basics like filling potholes, maintaining parks, and addressing public safety. We have 9 in 10 voters agreeing with that. If you can get 9 in 10 folks to agree with anything that in public opinion research, that's near unanimity. So that is very much a commonly held belief across the county. You can see the strong agreement is quite high here. And then we ask a couple questions specific to education and compare it to sort of the framing around local government or, your city or county. You can see slightly better ratings. 58% of voters agree that public schools in the Spokane area need more funding to improve educational outcomes. And so that's sort of the inversion of what we had up here. Local government has enough money to address important priorities. 65% agree, but when it's like Spokane schools need more funding, yet nearly 60% agree, nearly two-thirds in the city of Spokane. And that's, as you can see, been fairly consistent, very consistent since the spring. Similarly, trust in my local public school district to make decisions that benefit students in the community. Fairly divided here. 49% overall agree with that statement, so slight majority disagree. But again, flipping back here, when we say trust my local government to spend my tax dollars responsibly, we're getting into the 60s and 70s% of distrust. So slightly better ratings here when specifically about schools. And then I support increased public investment in community infrastructure and services such as schools, parks, and transit. Do you agree or disagree? This is a new question, so we don't have any trend data on this. But what we do see is nearly three-quarters of voters do agree with that statement. I will note that increased public investment is very much left up to the interpretation of respondents here. And so everyone can be sort of bringing with them a different definition of what that means to them. For some, it will, of course, mean that means more taxes, more tax dollars. I understand that, and I still agree with that. But for some, they might not view it in the same way. So this is not by no means a direct ballot test or anything like that. Now, on to those questions about housing and growth. We have this pair of questions here. First, it's sort of more broad about growth and development. All things considered, growth and development has been a positive for my area. And as I mentioned, fairly divided on this across the community. A slight majority of voters disagree with that statement, and that holds across the city of Spokane and Spokane Valley. And if you look here on the right, this is the share of voters that sort of pick the ends of the scale. So in this case, it was strongly agree, somewhat disagree, some strongly disagree. And you can see there's very much a deficit in the intensity of attitudes between those who agree growth and development has been a positive and those who think it has not been a positive. So belief it has not been a positive is sort of much more strongly held. Uh, uh, Compared to those who think it has been. Similarly, I support the building of more types of housing in my neighborhood. Again, fairly divided. Nearly 55% say they disagree with that sentiment. We see a similar gap in intensity, not as drastic as it is for the sort of broader question. And this is one of the few places we really do start to see a big distinction between voters in the city of Spokane and the voters of Spokane Valley. A slight majority of voters agree in Spokane agree they support more types of housing. 60%, more than 60% of voters in Spokane Valley disagree with that. So clear gulf between voters in those two cities. We do ask a follow-up to this growth and development question where it's just, why do you agree or why do you disagree that growth and development has been a positive? And what we've seen, I believe we first asked this last time. What we see for those who say growth and development has been a positive has remained consistent compared to 6 months ago. And it's very much all about the economic opportunities, the job opportunities that growth creates, the business expansion and diversity of businesses growth brings. Whereas those who believe it's been a negative, which again is about half of voters across the county, some mention specifically planning development decisions or criticisms of how it was like governance criticisms or like leadership on the issue. But there is a significant share of voters who mention things directly tied to those top issues for all voters across the county. So increased crime and safety concerns, 12% of voters who think growth and development has been a negative say that. Increase in homelessness, another 10% mentioned that. So very much there's a undercurrent of voters who say, I don't like growth and development because I think it has contributed to these issues that are facing this area, issues that so many voters care about. And finally, a few questions on the local economy as well as specifically downtown Spokane. Uh, Here we ask, how do you feel about the area's economy? And as I mentioned, uh, pessimism has increased, and this is going to, again, color perceptions of quality of life. You can see the voters rating either a 1 or a 2 out of 5 dropped from October of last year to May, but has since jumped back up. We still get a good chunk of voters sort of in this 3 out of 5, not optimistic, not pessimistic. But when you look between uh, when you look between the sort of the 1 to 2 versus the 4 and 5, you can see there's a clear level of pessimism that has increased in the past 6 months. Few more questions here on downtown Spokane. Uh, First, we see that voters across the county, regardless of whether they're in the city or not, are worried about the future of downtown Spokane and recognize it as a critical piece to the region's economic health. Nearly 9 in 10 voters think a thriving downtown Spokane is critical to the region's economic health. More than 8 in 10 are worried about the future of downtown Spokane. And if you look, you can see that the voters in the city of Spokane are no more likely to agree with this than voters overall in Spokane Valley. So this is not a, regional divide of voters in the city recognize how important downtown is and voters outside couldn't care less. No, voters of all types across the county are saying this is an important bit and would support sort of revitalization or continuing to build towards a thriving downtown Spokane. Uh, Another question on sort of governance and specifically business environment. Recent policy decisions by, again, insert city here, have negatively impacted the ability of local small businesses to remain open and thrive. Three-quarters of voters in the city of Spokane agree with that, nearly two-thirds overall. You can see that the overall has declined, whereas it's grown a little bit. So this decline in overall is very much being driven by voters outside of those two cities. So uh, a little bit of a sign of a gap here on that question in particular, that perhaps that is a sentiment held more commonly by voters, specifically in the city of Spokane and Spokane Valley about their local city governance than voters in the smaller towns or in unincorporated Spokane County. Next, we have our questions about downtown safety. Uh, about 6 in 10 voters say they would feel safe visiting downtown Spokane during the day. That is down slightly from the spring. And similarly, only about a quarter say they would feel safe visiting downtown Spokane at night. And this is something, again, this is not immovable. This is not something that will never change. It does take dedicated work on improving safety downtown, improving perceptions of safety. But going back to Seattle comparison one last time, Seattle saw very similar numbers, sort of at the low point on the quality of life ratings there. And in recent research, it's jumped up to over 80% of voters saying they feel safe downtown during the day, and nearly half of voters saying they feel safe at night. So these questions, these metrics can move. It just takes dedicated work. And then once once downtown safety is improved, part of the problem is getting people back downtown to recognize things have changed and things have gotten better. Two-thirds of voters across the county say they're visiting downtown Spokane less often than even a year ago, including 58% of voters in the city of Spokane. So very much a sort of two-part call to action here. Downtown safety, very much voters want to see that improved, but there also needs to be an effort to promote it and bring them back downtown so they can see that things have changed. So with that, that is my presentation. As Alicia mentioned, this is all available online. You can go and look, and we have all this great subgroup data and trend data, everything you can need. With that, I will pause and I'll see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Kevin. And Ted, if you wouldn't mind while we're fielding questions, if you'll just drop the link into where everything lives on our website, that would be awesome. And before we open for questions, just a couple of closing thoughts. One is a big thank you to Kevin, who's been on this ride with us since the beginning. And also just for all of you as partners to know, we spent last week, we've been on a series of briefings. So we spent last week briefing elected leaders and policymakers and staff from our various municipalities, both cities and county, and our board and the media, and now an opportunity to talk with all of you on, again, these really positioning the pulse as a tool for how we measure community outlook on the issues and priorities that are most pressing. And I think, as you've heard Kevin say throughout all of it, at this point, voters are very clear on those top priorities, and that we have the opportunity to continue to come together with our policymakers, as the business community, as community members, to drive action around these key issues, and that we can see, and you heard Kevin say it a few times, if we can make measurable progress on these issues that are top of mind, we'll be able to turn the dial on quality of life. And as I was telling we had a leadership advisory council meeting this morning, as I was telling them, I am really interested. I'd like to spend more time and energy diving into the slide that has been also consistent throughout and very clear on the division around growth, as we think about the role that we serve as an economic development organization, diving into that and exploring as we think about how we tackle these critical issues around business growth and that work around housing, around transportation. It's a key time as our cities and county are all doing their comprehensive planning. So those types of things are issues that are of real great interest to us. And what we know is that none of what we've talked about today can be done by any one entity, any one municipality, that it truly is around collective action. GSI, as your regional economic development organization, we're committed to continuing to bring the pulse forward as part of that conversation, continuing to be a convener and an advocate around these issues. I think on the issue of public safety and homelessness, the timing of the announcement of the Safe and Healthy Spokane Task Force couldn't be more timely, as it really speaks and demonstrates how significantly the community is aligned around these issues and how critical the work of that task force is to pull together our behavioral and mental health and criminal justice, our community advocates, all of those engaged in these issues to put forward some key comprehensive recommendations to our elected bodies. And so very pleased to be engaged in that work. I think another example of where you see this be able to be in action, currently the City of Spokane's Public Safety Committee is considering a safe and accessible public spaces ordinance that really speaks to the places that voters are telling us they want our governments to be prioritizing around key actions. And so there's a lot of ways to be engaging with this information and data. And the underpinning of all of this is around both building and rebuilding trust, and the responsibility that we all have in that collective work of building back public trust, and the role that the business community. We look a lot at the Edelman Trust Barometer, and that which is a global measurement of trust. And the most trusted entities across the globe continue to be the business community. And so, how are we balanced and trusted voice in these conversations with all of you, with policymakers, and with community around the things that are most important? So, really continuing to lean into that role as a regional organization. So in addition to my thanks to the team at EMC Research and to Kevin, a big thank you to the team here at GSI to their work to make sure we're making all of the connectivity with each of you. So again, our information, you know how to find us. And thank you for taking time out of your day to be here, and wish you all a great rest of the day.